The phone call came at 2:47 a.m., 3 months after my son packed my life into boxes and shipped me away like broken furniture. Agnes handed me the crackling receiver, and the words that followed would change everything I thought I knew about being forgotten. Please subscribe and like. Would you forgive a child who left you behind? The memory of that Tuesday morning still burned like acid in my chest. Tommy folding my sweaters into boxes, avoiding my eyes like I was already dead. Janet hovering in the doorway with arms crossed, counting the minutes until I disappeared. At 62, I'd become their inconvenient problem with a simple solution. For months, Janet's hints had fallen like poison drops. Too crowded, she'd mutter. Charlie needs space. I was becoming forgetful, leaving stoves on, doors unlocked. Each lie felt calculated, designed to paint me as the burden they needed to shed. Sunset Manor reeked of antiseptic and broken promises. My roommate Agnes whispered to empty air, her voice crackling like old radio static as she spoke to her dead husband about weather from 40 years ago. She'd answer phantom telephone calls, muscle memory from her operator days. 3 cardboard boxes. That's what 62 years of living looked like now. Days crawled past like dying insects. Around me, residents shuffled through motions, cards slapping on plastic tables, TV channels flickering with unwatched shows. Meals tasted like regret, seasoned with salt, and nights echoed with the hollow tick of institutional clocks. For 3 months, silence wrapped around me like a burial shroud. While phones rang for others, Mrs. Henderson's daughter calling daily, Mr. Walsh's grandson arriving with Sunday cookies, my world remained mute. I began wondering if I'd dreamed Tommy into existence, if motherhood had been just another delusion of my fading mind. Then the phone call shattered my silent world like breaking glass. Agnes shuffled to the nurse's station, her phantom shift at the telephone company kicking in. Her trembling fingers wrapped around the receiver before extending it toward me. Mrs. Patterson's voice crackled through the line. My neighbor and longtime family friend who'd become my only connection to their world since they'd erased me. Her words tumbled like falling dominoes. Charlie, my grandson I barely knew, was dying. 8 years old with a liver shutting down like a broken engine. No transplant meant no 9th birthday, no Christmas morning, no future. Tommy and Janet were drowning in desperation, their voices hoarse from begging strangers to save the child they'd kept from me. The cruelty of timing hit me like a physical blow. 3 months they'd erased me from existence, and now they needed a miracle from the very blood they'd discarded. Mrs. Patterson's voice shook as she painted their nightmare. Tommy collapsing under the weight of helplessness, Janet's makeup streaking down hollow cheeks. Every transplant list in 3 states held their names, but cadaver organs moved slower than Charlie's failing liver. Living donors offered the only real hope, yet family members fell like dominoes. Too old, too sick, too incompatible. The clock was ticking toward a future where Tommy would bury his son while his own mother rotted forgotten in a nursing home. The receiver trembled in my arthritic fingers as darkness whispered tempting words. Let them suffer, like they made you suffer. But Charlie's innocent face haunted me. Those eyes that mirrored Tommy's childhood, that crooked smile identical to my late husband's. This boy carried my blood, my legacy, and he was dying while I wallowed in justified bitterness. Then clarity struck, like lightning splitting darkness. 2 buses and 3 hours later, I stood in St. Mary's Hospital clutching my purse like armor against my chest. The intake nurse's eyebrows shot up when I whispered my request. Living donor evaluation for Charlie Morrison. Her fingers paused over the keyboard as she took in my wrinkled hands, my bus ride appearance, my desperate eyes that had seen too much loss. Dr. Rodriguez studied me with silver-haired wisdom, his voice gentle as he outlined the process. 2 weeks of testing, blood work, scans, psychological evaluation that proved my decision-making capacity remained sharp despite their convenient lies about my forgetfulness. but his eyes held questions he couldn't voice. Why would an estranged grandmother risk her life for a family that had abandoned her? I wasn't ready to answer that puzzle, not even to myself. Each test became a stolen moment of hope. I told Agnes I was attending book clubs downtown. She'd nod absently before returning to her phantom conversations, asking her ceiling husband about Atlantic City honeymoons that lived only in her fading memory. The call came on a gray Thursday morning. Dr. Rodriguez's voice carried impossible news through the crackling phone line. I was a suitable match. Only one match. The answer to their desperate prayers had been rotting in a nursing home all along. My old liver could save young Charlie's life. Everything aligned like stars: right blood type, healthy organ, optimal size. At 62, I wasn't too old to be a hero, just old enough to understand the cost. He leaned forward in his chair and spoke slowly, as if each word carried weight. I was medically suitable to proceed as Charlie's donor. The risks were serious, but manageable. The choice was entirely mine. I made him promise to keep my identity from the family. The donation would be handled through their anonymous living donor program. Dr. Rodriguez agreed, though he seemed troubled by my insistence on complete secrecy. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. I kept quiet about everything. The preoperative hours passed in a haze of medical preparation and silent prayer. I'd never had major surgery before, and the fear sat in my stomach like a stone. But every time doubt crept in, I thought about Charlie's smile in that faded photograph tucked in my Bible. I woke up with a bandage across my abdomen and a hollow ache that had nothing to do with the incision. Dr. Rodriguez stopped by to check on me, his face serious but relieved. His update was brief but miraculous. Charlie was doing well. Better than well. The transplanted liver segment was functioning perfectly. His color was already returning, and his energy levels were climbing steadily. Tommy and Janet hadn't left his bedside since the surgery, crying with relief and gratitude for the anonymous donor who'd saved their son. Dr. Rodriguez mentioned how they'd asked repeatedly about the donor, wanting to write thank you letters, to somehow express their overwhelming gratitude. He deflected their questions with professional kindness, honoring my request for complete privacy. I went home on day 6, moving slowly, stitches pulling with every step. The ride back to Sunset Manor felt endless, each bump in the road a reminder of what I'd just given up. But it was worth it. Charlie would live. Agnes welcomed me back by offering me her pudding cup and asking if I'd enjoyed my trip to 1967. I accepted the pudding and told her the book clubs were lovely. The surgery was successful, but nobody knew who saved him. Weeks passed like slow-moving clouds. Charlie made headlines in the local paper as a miracle recovery story. The anonymous donor who'd saved his life became a local legend. I cut out the article and kept it in my Bible, next to the photo of him I'd carried since he was born. The recovery updates came through Mrs. Patterson's phone calls. Charlie was back in school. Charlie was playing soccer again. Charlie was asking his parents about the person who'd saved his life, wondering if they were an angel sent from heaven. Still, no one called from my actual family. Not Tommy, not Janet, not even to share the good news about Charlie's miraculous recovery. I existed in their world only as a problem they'd solved by shipping me away to Sunset Manor. One afternoon in November, loneliness clawed at my chest like a living thing. I dialed Tommy's number with trembling fingers, desperate for any connection to the life I'd lost. Janet's voice was sharp when she answered, irritated by the interruption. I could hear Charlie's bright laughter echoing in the background. Healthy, vibrant, alive because of me. The sound pierced my heart with bittersweet joy. I kept my voice carefully neutral, asking how everyone was doing. Janet's response came clipped and cold, like she was reading from a script designed to end the call quickly. Everyone was fine, busy, no problems at all. They'd call me later when things settled down. The line went dead before I could say goodbye, leaving me clutching the receiver like a lifeline to nowhere. I held the receiver until the dial tone became unbearable, then returned to my room where Agnes was serving phantom tea to her sealing husband, asking if he remembered how Charlie used to laugh just like that. 3 months later, a single careless word would shatter the secret I'd guarded like buried treasure. Charlie needed his routine follow-up appointment that Tuesday morning. I'd been tracking his recovery through Mrs. Patterson's updates, each piece of news a small celebration I couldn't share with anyone who mattered. Dr. Rodriguez was having a particularly stressful day when Tommy brought Charlie in for his checkup. The waiting room was packed, phones were ringing constantly, and a medical student had just given the wrong medication to a patient in the ER. Tommy sat in the consultation room, holding Charlie's hand while Dr. Rodriguez reviewed the test results. Everything looked perfect. Charlie's new liver was thriving, his blood work was normal, his energy levels were those of any healthy 8-year-old. Tommy's voice cracked with emotion as he spoke about the anonymous donor, how grateful he was, how he wished he could thank them personally, how he'd teach Charlie to honor this gift for the rest of his life. That's when the nurse's careless words shattered everything. She knocked and entered with a clipboard, her voice carrying the loud whisper of someone who thought she was being discreet. The donor consent forms had been found, Grandma Linda's paperwork accidentally filed under the family chart. The room fell silent except for fluorescent lights humming like trapped insects. Tommy's face cycled through confusion, recognition, then devastating realization. Dr. Rodriguez stepped backward, his features draining of color as the magnitude of the disclosure hit him. Charlie's innocent eyes looked up at his father, wondering aloud if Grandma Linda was the angel who had saved his life. The frantic call to Sunset Manor came within minutes, but I was already gone, checked out 10 days earlier with no forwarding address, just a simple note about living with family. The receptionist's apologetic voice delivered news that would send Tommy into a desperate search across 3 counties. The truth was simpler and more complicated than that. I'd gone to stay with my brother Earl in the countryside, where the phone rarely rang and the only visitors were curious chickens. Agnes had cried when I left, asking her sealing husband why everyone always disappeared. 3 weeks of searching brought Tommy to Earl's front porch, looking like a man who'd aged decades in days. His hands trembled against the wooden door as recognition dawned in his hollow eyes. His voice cracked with my name, followed by the question that had been eating him alive. Had I saved Charlie? I studied this stranger wearing my late husband's face and gave him the only truth that mattered. I'd signed what needed signing. His apologies tumbled out between tears, but I'd moved beyond forgiveness into something colder and more final. My last words to him were simple: be a better father than he'd been a son. Then I closed the door on 32 years of motherhood, but some distances live in the heart, not on maps, and some silences scream louder than any words ever could. Charlie breathed because I chose love over bitterness, sacrifice over revenge. That truth pulsed through his veins with every heartbeat, even if my name wasn't the one he expected to thank. I never did move back to the city. Earl's farm had room for another set of hands, and the chickens never judged anyone for getting old or making hard choices that nobody else understood. Sometimes, when the wind carries children's laughter across Earl's fields, I wonder if Charlie knows the truth about his second chance. Does he understand that the blood flowing through his new liver carries the same stubborn love that once rocked his father to sleep? Or do some secrets die with the women who keep them, buried deeper than any grave could ever hold?